Now, I want to welcome you, Gabrielle, to my travel chat. And I want to thank you for taking the time, for sharing your story, and for sharing your pictures with us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you. So let's get the share the screen. I want everyone to see your adventure that you had. So here we go. There you are,
All masked up.
all masked up and ready to go.
I hope I didn't scare too many people with that mask, but
Oh, I love that mask though. There's some really funny ones out there. Okay, so you went over to Europe for 7 days, and let's just see if this is going to move for me. There we go.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it was
it was
an adventure.
it was an adventure. It was kind of crazy when I thought about it logically, going to Europe for 7 days and then having to quarantine for 14 days on my return. The
Right.
balance seemed a little bit crazy, as I said, but for me it was worth it. Because there was a whole context to the trip, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been having quite a hard time throughout the spring and the summer, especially as time went on, and the atmosphere of what I call doom and gloom persisted, and there was all these newspaper headlines saying, travel would never return, singing in choirs would never return, normal life would never return, we'd better get used to the new normal. And it just seemed to me that the balance was a little bit off, and I was starting to lose hope and to lose a lot of enthusiasm. And so I just had this idea to travel to a part of the world that was perhaps a little further ahead in their thinking, or further along, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I had read quite a bit about what things were like in Sweden and in the Netherlands. And so I chose Amsterdam and Stockholm as two cities to focus on for this very short trip in August.
Yeah, yeah, because it is a short trip. It's a jump in and jump out when you're only there 7 days, but you filled your days clearly.
Oh, I didn't stop. I mean, that's my style. I say I'm 63 years old, but I travel like a 25-year-old, for better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I went alone. I'm married, and my husband is 67. In general, he tends to be more cautious than I am, just in general about life. He wasn't really interested in going with me, but he fully supported the trip. He understood how important it was to me, and he knew that I would, be safe and take the necessary precautionary measures when I got back, and that was good enough for him. He agrees with me that at this point, 6 months into the pandemic, we need to all find our own balance between safety and living our own lives.
That's
And
right.
so,
I agree. And we all have different comfort levels. So you exercised yours and he was supportive of it.
exactly. So I was very grateful for that. And so off I went.
Yeah. And the next picture, oh my Lord, I forget the name of this hotel, but it is an amazing, there it is. It,
Ah, that hotel. Yeah, that was,
I put the
yeah,
map up. Oh, it's Intel Hotels. It's just a little outside of Amsterdam.
that's right. I didn't stay there though. I mean, so if you back up, I stayed in a little tiny hotel room right in the middle of the red light district.
Lovely.
And for people who have not been to Amsterdam, it's actually not, sort of sleazy or anything like that. It's very much in the tourist area, the red light district. It's very respectable. And when I got to Amsterdam, there was a heat wave, and it never went below 32 degrees the whole time. My hotel room, was very basic. It had shared bathrooms, no air conditioning, which is fine with me. But the neat thing was, being in the middle of the red light district gave me an opportunity to talk to sex workers on their breaks. And
Mm-hmm.
I talked to one, I remember in particular, about how or whether COVID had affected the sex trade, which had resumed in July. And she said, well, why do you think it would affect it? And I said, well, I don't know. Maybe there's rules about you can't really kiss and hug your clients. she gave me a strange look and said, my clients don't, come to me for the lovey-dovey stuff. They just want to get the job done. COVID
Yes.
hasn't changed any of that.
They're not there for the cuddles.
Exactly. So,
Oh Lord, that I love that. And then you ventured over to Stockholm. How was the vibe different, or was it the same?
well, I'll just backtrack a little bit to Amsterdam,
Okay.
saying that 1 month
Oh, I'm going the wrong way.
before,
Sorry.
oh yeah, 1 month before I got there, there had been an uptick in cases going on
Yes.
for a month, but no corresponding uptick in deaths. So the city took the decision to institute an indoor mask mandate in 3 limited tourist areas, which I thought was a reasonable and proportionate response. So in those tourist areas, whenever you walked into a store or indoors, you put a mask on. But anywhere else, there was no requirement, either indoors or outdoors. And so the vibe, I would say, was quite relaxed. I mean, we knew we were in a pandemic. There were signs and there were, the masks in those areas, but a lot of people, including a lot of tourists, no American tourists, they were conspicuous in their absence, shall we say. And, but I heard a lot of French, a lot of German, some Slavic languages. And I spoke with a bar owner who said that tourism was at about 50% of normal levels for August. So it was still quite busy. It felt like you were in a tourist city, but it wasn't wall-to-wall people. So it was actually, if I may say, it was a really good time to go there.
I love the sign, by the way. That's fabulous.
Yes. The Amsterdam store.
That's fun.
What
Yeah,
not to bring in with you. Yes, I know, like Gabrielle, as you were saying about the lack of crowds. I mean, that's something that as a travel agent, when I put groups together, I'm always trying to convince people to go on, and I think I mentioned to you what we call the shoulder season.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the weather's going to be okay, but it's not high season, and you will encounter less crowds. And that's how I tend to do things, because if I'm going to spend my time and my money to go over somewhere, I want to get the most I can, the most bang for my buck.
Well, yeah, it makes such a big difference. And actually thinking about it now, the airports was a similar experience in that there were people, certainly in Amsterdam, there were people, but it wasn't crowded and you just had that space to breathe. And all the expected safety measures were in place at the airports and in the airplanes. So I would say that I never felt unsafe, not for 1 minute. I felt well taken care of, and there wasn't that extra stress of all the lineups that you would usually get in August. So it was actually
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And here we are at an open air market. Now, this is one of the Sunday markets in Stockholm.
Yeah, this was a market that was right near the place where I was staying. So I'll just talk about that a little bit. When I got to Stockholm in the evening, I was so excited to find out I was staying in this lovely Airbnb right in the heart of town. It couldn't be better positioned with a lovely view. And it turns out that I was the first Airbnb guest of the people who were living in the apartment, after they temporarily shut down of their own volition for COVID. And this was a pair of pastors. And what I discovered is that it's a really good thing to find an Airbnb in an apartment occupied by pastors, because they often get the place for free by their religious community. They can live there and they pass along the savings to the renters, or to the Airbnb renters. So I got an excellent deal in what is a very expensive city.
That's a great tip. And here you met up with some Brazilians.
Yes, I have a history with Brazilians. I lived there in 2018. I speak the language, and I have a lot of Brazilian friends here in Toronto. And so I just had this crazy idea to get on this Facebook group, Brazilians in Stockholm, because Brazilians are everywhere in the world, and they have like Brazilians in Amsterdam, Brazilians in Toronto, Brazilians in Paris. So I got on and I just posted saying, oh, if anyone has a free day and wants to hang out, I'm just passing through. And so these two unrelated, well, there was more actually who responded, but I ended up spending the day with these two unrelated people, this woman in the background in the middle there, and this young man. And the woman, as it turned out, she's Brazilian, married to a Swede, and she has lived in Stockholm for many years and actually has certification as a tour guide. So she was able to show us all these wonderful places. It was a glorious day, as were all the days that I spent in Stockholm. And so I just spent a lovely day with them, just hanging out with these former strangers.
That is the most amazing thing to do. And as I've traveled solo a couple of times, but never like I've done like 3 solo cruises, Lisa, and one with Lisa, and then a couple of trips actually to all inclusive. So I'm loving seeing how you did this differently, and going from town to town. And then this is just an amazing thing to put yourself out there to meet total strangers, and what an enriching experience that was for you. I mean, I met people in those other situations I just mentioned that was nice, but this I find very cool. I'm so excited to hear that.
No, thank you. It was amazing. It was a very memorable day that I will never forget. I think the next picture.
Oh yes.
That's because that was on the same day. The 3 of us went to a floating restaurant. I mean, Stockholm's an amazing city because it consists of 14 islands plus the mainland. And so there's water everywhere in between all those islands. And they have all these floating restaurants. So we went to have lunch there. And the weather was so beautiful that day, and so warm and sunny that I actually jumped into the water in my skirt and t-shirt. Because I couldn't resist. It was just too beautiful. So there you go.
That's really great.
And then this would be the same market, is it not?
Yeah, that was the same market as that flea market, but in this case it was like a produce market. From Monday to Saturday it's a produce market, and then on Sunday it turns into the flea market. And what was interesting about Stockholm was I actually forgot that there was a pandemic going on. I mean, I think that the Swedes, had done their homework, so to speak. They had taken voluntary measures to contain the spread throughout the spring and early summer, and I think they were a little bit ready to celebrate. Their death rate was very low, their curve was under control, and there were no masks. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with masks, but I'm just saying in the context of sort of forgetting that there was a pandemic, and everything just seemed normal. And I think it was something that I needed to see, just to have hope that at some point in time, perhaps we would get to that phase as well in Canada. And it was just nice to not have that in the back of my mind for a few days. In the stores, in the restaurants, on the beaches, in the parks, everything just seemed normal. And I hadn't experienced that for almost 6 months, and it seemed very precious.
Yeah, and then sadly, your trip came to an end. This is your last day.
Yes. I took a boat cruise to a nearby island that was super quaint, and stopped at this cafe for an afternoon treat. They call it fika. It's the equivalent of English tea, or perhaps Viennese pastries in the afternoon, where people stop for thick Swedish coffee and some kind of a pastry.
Oh, sign me up.
Okay.
Coffee and pastry, can't say no.
No, can't go wrong with that for sure.
No. And then finally, you came home and you were had a little bit of hesitation.
More than a little, yeah. I mean, just because I had seen all these wars go on online, they talk about the keyboard warriors and so forth, and I'd seen some pretty ugly stuff. People throwing insults at each other, and really being intolerant and not listening to different perspectives. And that's one of the things that had really upset me over the past few months. But I felt that there was nothing to be ashamed of. I didn't do anything against the law. I felt that I conducted myself safely during the trip, and so why not post about it? So I did. And so, but I was prepared for criticism because, as I said, that's what I had been seeing online. But it didn't come. No criticism at all, only support and, you know, the usual likes and loves and all that. So I was very pleasantly surprised. It made me think that perhaps just the mentality in Canada is loosening up a little bit, and we are becoming a little bit more tolerant.
Right.
So what were the levels of infection at the time that you went? Because here I'm in the US and our levels are still high and unfortunately on the rise. And so it's very much a reality for us still. And you're probably aware that we're not allowed to go anywhere. Like, you know, nobody in the world wants US citizens right now.
I'm aware, and that's why there was no US tourist anywhere, which was very unusual. But in Canada at the time, they had not started to rise again. So we were in a very nice low trough.
Gotcha.
And the European Union had designated certain countries as safe to go visit based on their rates. And Canada was on that short list of countries that the EU was welcoming. So that was a situation.
So I think, you know, it's my understanding, to be quite honest, looked recently at what levels of infection are, you know, broadly and in Europe. But I know they got hit hard very early. And so, and we are experiencing a resurgence here with return to colleges and universities and schools, you know, grade schools. And I live in a town that is, I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and we have several universities here. And with the college kids back, unfortunately, our numbers are spiking. So from my perspective, travel seems so far off because it's not even safe. It is not even safe to go to a restaurant here, let alone to travel abroad. So it's refreshing to, you know, virtually see a little bit of what you experienced, because mentally here we're all fried, like totally French fried. And as you're aware, we've got just a whole other negative political climate. So it was very refreshing to see your experience and that you felt like you were able to
well, you know, I do think that everyone has a different tolerance for risk. And I think at some point we need to acknowledge that and to fold that into the way we live our lives. I don't think, at least that's my perspective, I don't really support all of us just not living and not doing anything until the virus is gone from the face of the earth. I don't think that that's realistic or desirable. And I know that others may feel differently, but I think that at this point it's probably healthy to acknowledge that different people will have a different tolerance for risk. Mine has always been high. Although I don't consider myself reckless by any stretch of the imagination, but I know there are many 63-year-olds who would not do what I did, and I respect that. And
I know everyone has their own limits and where they'll go. Because I know, Gabrielle, we talked about, you're not the first woman I spoke to that of our age bracket that stays in B&Bs. Or hostels.
I've stayed in hostels. On a past trip to Amsterdam, I stayed in a hostel with all these 20-year-old university students. I don't know. I think I've discussed this with you before, Lisa, but I have nothing against luxury, and I travel a lot on business. And if a client is going to pay for me to stay in a 4 or 5-star hotel, I am not going to say no, and I will enjoy the experience. But I also enjoy I love connecting with young people. It helps me stay young. And I also, I can be pretty cheap when it comes to transportation. I don't like spending, transportation and lodging. I will spend a lot of money on a great meal or a great, I don't know, theater experience or anything like that. But I can be a cheapskate when it comes to lodging and transportation, and I'll try to cut corners because I'm a pretty good sleeper and pretty flexible that way. So so I do still stay in hostels sometimes.
There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying that everybody has, you know, their own thing. Myself, I was saying that one of my favorite hotels is a 2-star, less than a kilometer from the center of Madrid. And what makes it a 2-star is there's no one there overnight. The front desk closes at 11. There's no business center. All you get is a clean room, your private bathroom, and internet.
Ah,
Set of
the
stairs
most
that
important
you
thing.
hike up with your suitcase to get there. And so, but have I stayed in the 5-star in Madrid as well? Absolutely. I got a travel agent rate one time and I stayed right across the road from the Prado and it was wonderful.
Wow.
Did I enjoy it more? I think I slept equally well in both properties.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all in the experience that you're seeking. And for myself, even though as a Canadian, there are destinations that I can travel to, I'm not traveling right now. My comfort level says I go visit my 92-year-old parents in a nursing home. I'm just going to stay put for now. But that's me.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, you did your 2-week quarantine. That's what the government asks of you. And you
I did it. Yeah, I did it. And I lived in the basement for 2 weeks and it worked out well. I had planned this. I had a ton of work to do. And so I just worked the whole time.
How long was your trip? How many? I missed the very beginning of the meeting.
Well, that was the crazy part. It was 7 days. So 7-day trip, 14-day quarantine. I wouldn't do it every month, but this time.
All right, gotcha. So did your husband like slide food down the basement stairs to you, or?
Yeah, well, I came up to get food at different times, so we didn't intersect. Yeah.
I think that if I went away, I'd probably try and rent someone's cottage, cabin to go to so that I could at least sit out on the front porch. And, in a perfect world, that's what I'd do. Well, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have COVID-19. So
that's right. Well, I really hope that both of you get to travel soon.
Well,
yeah, thank you.
Well, Sandy and I were planning.
Oh, no kidding. Fingers crossed.
Yes,
oh my goodness.
Wonderful Greek cruise this July. All-inclusive Greek cruise.
Oh my God. Do you have room in your suitcase?
Yes. I can send you the details if anyone needs the details on this wonderful, wonderful Greek cruise. I've sailed with this cruise line twice before, not in Greece, however, and I'm so looking forward to this in July. And I know Sandy is as well, aren't you?
I am, yes. I need, if nothing else, for my mental health.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that July is far enough out there that Greece will allow us, Americans, to come.
So do I. So do I.
And at least I'm still working on, Jen and I still want you to get us our Canadian, what do you call it? Like, our citizenship,
permanent residency.
Our permanent residency, because we're done. We're done.
Okay. Yeah, we'll all be watching on November
Our honorary citizenship, if nothing else. So.
Well, you ladies are welcome. Come on.
Thanks. Greatly appreciate that. We'll come hang out with you in Wayland.
Yes. My famous puppy dog.
Yep.
Ladies, I want to thank you for joining me. Next week, I'm at a loss. I usually have things lined up for each week, and I don't have anything set up for next Friday's travel chat. So I'm going to have to put on my thinking cap, as they say, and come up with an awesome topic. And to that end, if anyone has any topics they'd like me to look into and share, by all means, reach out and let me know. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And I'll say goodbye to Facebook right now. And
all right.
So that's it. We start.
Very good.
And I'm thanking you so much, Sandy, for jumping in and joining us. She's a single cruise friend. I do a lot of single cruising and I meet a lot of people from all over, and it's a fabulous way of traveling.